Okay, inshallah, we're gonna start in a few seconds, inshallah. يلا بسم الله. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين سيدنا ونبينا وحبيبنا محمد صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا. Inshallah, we're continuing our series of how to treat each other, or the prophetic way of how to treat each other. The Islamic principles on really coming to understand the psychology of people from an Islamic perspective, not being an expert in psychology, but just in Islamic principles. You know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted us to treat us or treat each other in a certain way, and that by all means would align with our creation, and it would not do nothing but it brings goodness to us when we know how to treat each other. And we started last week with the spousal relationship, because that's what builds societies, and that's what builds communities, that's what builds families, that's what brings people together. And then inshallah ta'ala we will build on that and extend that to beyond, spousal relationship, parental relationship, and would really deal with each other, community relationships, and then neighbors, friends, business partners, and even with relationships with non-Muslims as well. Now that we're continuing with the spousal, and we said we're focusing more because it's what builds families and societies and communities at large. One, we talked last week and we stopped at what was the incident where Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, despite the culture and the jealousy and what have you, how he allowed his wife to watch the practice and training of some young men in the masjid, and she kept watching until she was all satisfied and she was happy that she saw some type of training or some type of entertainment, and it was sufficient for her. Then he did not rush her or anything. And we were repeating together that this, and what Prophet ﷺ was pushing himself to do, was something beyond what's so comfortably accepted within that culture, which teaches us that treating each other on the Islamic principles is not an easy thing. So you are actually pushing yourself to do something that is not normally coming out of you. So you have the few exceptions, and we're not going to talk about the few exceptions of people around the world that, mashallah, have it all, mashallah. That they're so cool, they don't get mad, they don't get instigated, that no matter what you do, mashallah, they're so wise. Their behavior is so recognized that they weigh every word that they say. They make sure that they do not say things that hurts people's feeling. They always talk when they feel that it's needed for them to talk. And I can go on and on, but that's very few examples. And we can't build on this. Our nature is the opposite. Our nature is to be a little bit impulsive. We rush into things. We do the damage, and then we recognize, okay, how do I rectify? But as we train ourselves, part of the training is you're reducing the amount of these incidents, which is great. Instead of you doing many incidents, now you're doing way less of those incidents, which requires less of an apology from your part, less of damage and hurtful things that you do toward others, less, which means that you're building up, alhamdulillah, to a point that we build part of it is that we're going against our comfort. Our comfort zone, let's talk about it. Yes, our comfort zone, our comfort behavior, our impulsive rushness into things. So you always need to remember that these things are achievable, doable. They're not as easy, but this is the struggle that you get so much reward for, inshallah. So one of it was that example that Prophet Muhammad ﷺ allowed his wife, with the jealousy that he has as a man, to watch young men doing training and some type of like body movements, and not only allowed her to watch, but she watched for a longer time and she wanted more. And he said, are you finished? Are you done? And she says, no, I want more. And he allowed her to do it. So it is something that he wants to teach us, that you're going to struggle through it, but the outcome would be so positive that it makes a relationship extremely healthy. And that's because of the struggle that you went through. One of those beautiful examples would be another example on page 51, which is that he, sallallahu alayhi wasallam, would accompany his wives to feasts out of kindness. And there was a story that you would read it on page 51, that Prophet ﷺ was invited for a feast. And he openly asked the host, can I bring my wife or my wives with me? And the host, not being rude, remember, this is how culture change, are different. Those are kind of Bedouins, they're straightforward, bold. They're not rude, but they just give straight answers. The feast or the food that was prepared was only for a specific number of people that they had in mind, including Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. So they told him no. Now it might be sounding extremely rude to us, but and that's Prophet of Allah. Can you imagine Prophet of Allah saying, I want to bring my wife with me? I said, no. And what's so ironic is that he said, I can't do it. But he didn't say, because, I don't come to any feast without my wife, because, that's not a rule. But, he wanted to bring these beautiful examples within someone's life. And also, he didn't say that I only go to these gatherings with my wife. He didn't say that. Why? Because he also wants to teach his wives that I don't want you to shadow me everywhere I go in my life. So you have your private life, I have my private life. I have certain gatherings where I want to be all by myself. And you must have your own gatherings where you want to be by yourself. So alhamdulillah, it gives that flexibility of also not shadowing each other, where it becomes extremely difficult to do anything else. And then if something else to be suggested in the future, then a problem would arise. Because you set the standards that it has to be always together. We can't do that because there are some certain commitments in life where it doesn't require us. So that was very wise from Prophet Muhammad, that he didn't set it as a rule, but he wanted to bring to the others this beautiful meaning of spousal relationship, that a wife is very important in someone's life, that they would want to know if this invitation is for both of us or for me only. So they would, now the person is realizing, he didn't realize it at the beginning, now he's realizing, or not realizing, but wanted to make sure that now is reconsidering. He wants Prophet Muhammad ﷺ to attend, but still didn't get it. So he went back to Prophet ﷺ thinking that Prophet ﷺ might said it just being polite, or I was not, politely aggressive, as aggressive. So he went back to him and he said, I really would love for you to attend this feast. Would you please attend? So Prophet ﷺ didn't say, I'm committed or anything. He said, can I bring my wife with me? And again, he would say no, because again, not being rude, it's just not. So Prophet ﷺ would give the same answer, well, I can't make it. So it happened now, the person is realizing where he went wrong. And he wants Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. And then again, they were trained by Prophet ﷺ that the food will bring barakah. Don't worry about the measurements of, oh, well, I just counted for 5 people. Can't, unless you have the invitation. Well, khas, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brings that barakah. So the third time he came and said, Prophet Allah, we really want you to attend. And he said, can I bring my wife with me? He said, yes, of course you can bring your wife with you. And this is where Prophet ﷺ accepted the invitation. Now, we would go on the same page. He sallallahu alayhi wasallam would bid farewell to his wives if they visited him. So this is also something really unique. This page of 52 would explain in detail that Prophet Muhammad ﷺ would get involved and starts a worship act. And the worship act is what you're familiar with maybe during Ramadan of what we call i'tikaf. Is everyone familiar with what i'tikaf is? It's that part where you seclude yourself in the masjid and you don't get out. And it has a lot of restrictions to it. You can't do this, you can't do that, you can't do this, you can't do that. So it has restrictions to it, exactly like the restrictions of salah. You start salah, you got yourself intact within a worship act. You can't talk, you can't laugh, you can't eat, you can't drink, you can't shake hands, you can't greet people, you can't reply to people, you can't walk. So many things, even though those are all permissible acts outside of salah. But just because you said Allahu Akbar, you got yourself intact within a worship act that requires some certain criteria to it. That does not entitle you to do some or many of permissible acts. Now, i'tikaf is the same thing. Part of the i'tikaf's rules is that because you got yourself intact inside the masjid and secluded yourself, you can't get out. Not because it's haram to get out, it's just part of the restrictions, part of the i'tikaf to be intact. You should stay in the masjid. You should sleep in the masjid. You should eat in the masjid. You should drink in the masjid. You should pray in the masjid. You should sleep in the masjid. Even if you need to take a shower, you should take the shower in the masjid. You should all in the masjid. So now saying that, Prophet Muhammad ﷺ went out of these restrictions to show the Sahaba the importance of this company, of spousal company, to show concern and to show deep love through concern, being concerned. One of his wives visited him during his i'tikaf at night. And that's fine and that's permissible because he's not leaving. She's just coming in. Just visiting, because again, there are restrictions of spousal relationship, cannot happen, what have you, no acts of desire, no intimacy, nothing. But just regular visiting, of course, that's no problem. They got carried away with talking and whatever, so it got late. Now she realizes that it's late, he realizes it's late, but she does not intend, because she's not really ready to perform i'tikaf. She still wants to go back home. This is where Prophet ﷺ went out of his i'tikaf and physically accompanied her to her house, which is his house, but to her specific house, because he had other wives. So he went against his worship. Just imagine in life how sometimes we really get things honestly mixed up. We're so flexible, so cool, so accommodating with others. And we smile, we have great body gesture, we talk on the phone with the nicest tone, we laugh, we joke. But the unfortunate fact, the opposite is not happening, which is when our loved ones, when our spouses call us, we're so quick and rushing. Yes, okay, yeah. You know, alhamdulillah, it's nothing wrong, but it's a dry talk. It's very dry and quick. Okay, make it quick, please, I'm busy. And with others, we don't do that. And we are ready to carry on a conversations, laughter, all that. You know, so there's just something wrong with the treatment, because it should be the opposite, honestly. But people say, well, we get so used to our loved ones. I'm not going to carry a conversation like a friend. Sure, we have to be practical. But we don't go to the other extreme of being rude, right? Cutting them off. Oh, okay, make it quick, make it whatever, you know. Or what makes it worse is that when it is being done in the company of others, right? So someone in the masjid, in the lobby, or in the parking lot, or we're going on a community, gathering or picnic or whatever. And again, you're carrying yourself very well and laughing and, with your friends. And when your wife approaches you or when your husband approaches you, it's either or. Again, we carry ourselves in a different way. And we become that serious and, we wanted to get it. And the spouse, whether the wife or the husband, always feel that they're burden on their other spouses when it comes to communication. And that they always are being fed with the appearance that their conversations are heavy on their chests and they're not ready to accommodate, they're not ready to smile, they're not ready to... Here Prophet Muhammad ﷺ went physically against discomfort, remember. Now sometimes we say, well, I'm in the masjid, I am going to Jum'ah, I am in the ibadah, Ramadan, Taraweeh, and i'tikaf, I'm fasting, and we take the excuses of the worship acts to justify sometimes, I don't want to say our rudeness, but like unacceptable behavior. That makes it worse, because we're using our worship acts to justify something that goes against our Islamic principles. So yes, remember what we said last week and this week. Yes, we have to act against our nature. If your nature is telling you, well, my loved ones, they understand me, and I'm not going to and that's why I'm this way. No. You train yourself to be exactly what you are of being accommodating. You listen, you allow them to talk, and you don't show them that they are burden on you when it comes to communication, especially in front of people. So while this was happening, Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, and that's the famous hadith of Prophet ﷺ, while he was walking, that's another lesson of treatment. This is very important. As they were walking, remember it's like in the middle of the night, late at night. And that's not usual. And it's dark. It's not. And Prophet Muhammad ﷺ gets spotted by two Sahabas. They recognize Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, but they don't recognize his wife. Why? Because of the dressing, and they're not used to see his wives, and they're not as familiar. And besides, Prophet Muhammad ﷺ wives are completely covered with the full hijab, so people don't recognize them. They're covered, they're fully covered. So out of respect to Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, they quicken their pace of walk. They rush out of the way. It just happens by the qadr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that they crossed path. Now they want to give Prophet ﷺ his privacy, not knowing who that lady is with him, but assumed every positive assumption that it must be one of his mahrams, one of his maharim, whether it's a wife, a daughter, whatever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allowed for him to be closely intact with and walking all alone at night with. So they had no second guess about this, but out of respect to him, they wanted to get out of his path, so they rushed themselves ahead of him, acting as if they did not see Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. So this is another beautiful gesture, where sometimes you feel that if you want to give people privacy, just don't intervene or don't push yourself upon a situation where you feel it's best for you not to be part of it, especially if it's something really private. And why should I just disturb such privacy? Many examples would happen in life, and you might run into it a lot. And you're out, you're shopping, you're in a park, you are in areas where people, you're walking in a park, and from far distance you are recognizing that you might about to cross path with people that you know. That's fine. Alhamdulillah, you give salam, alhamdulillah, it's natural. But what's not natural, while you're walking, and it's a park, and there is a family, not family, let's say just a couple, just maybe just got married, and you're walking and you're far away from them, right? You do not need to disturb their privacy and to disturb their discussion and talk and salamu alaikum, and you want to really, you don't. Islamically, we don't need to do that because you're not crossing path. And that's what happened to the Sahaba. They're not really crossing path, but they're sharing really the same path now. And they were ahead, and they kind of got faster and faster, so they don't want to make Prophet ﷺ feel uncomfortable. But he called upon them. He actually stopped them and called upon them, told them, come back. He wanted to make sure that nothing really goes through their minds. He told them, by the way, this is my wife Safiya. They went like in total discomfort of, oh Prophet of Allah, we would never second guess this. Of course, This is just, we wanted to give you that privacy. This is where he said the famous hadith that the shaitan goes through the Bani Adam like the blood stream, like the blood goes through its stream and veins. So meaning that it's metaphoric and it's just an expression of saying that the shaitan's whispering is always all over us and can bring you assumptions, accusations, things, misjudgment, miscommunication, negative understanding of something, where we should always push it away. But he said that hadith that we build on it many of our treatments now, assuming the good, giving the benefit of doubt, not building any judgments upon assumptions. We're at unfortunate fact that some culture now that we're going to the other extreme. The very first impression would be a negative impression, an accusation, false assumptions, negative connotations to anything that is said or done. So this is something very important that we need, inshallah, to pay attention to. He, sallallahu alayhi wasallam, never laid a hand on any of his wives or criticized them. Yani this is another high level. It's not only laying hands, physically using his the power that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave him to kind of abuse loved ones or under his authority and whatever. Not only that, but subhanallah, to a point you live all these years with someone and you don't criticize them and you don't unintentionally hurt their feeling, that's really top. And as we said, this is prophetic way, yes. We don't need to get all the way to that level, but like if we are getting higher and higher and higher on a level that we are aiming to go to the top, just the fact that we're incrementally going up and getting better every year, that by itself is a great accomplishment. It's a great accomplishment by itself. Now, it is very important to talk, so at least for you as knowledgeable people to come and seek knowledge. What is the issue of this, of physical hitting or beating that is one of the most controversial things within our, traditions? So here we read that Prophet ﷺ never laid a hand on his wives. And then we read in the Quran that there is something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allows a husband to physically hit his wife. And again, it's not within the core of our course, but I would like you just to have a sense of how do we view this. And we're gonna view it with its pure way, so because you can't fool yourself and you can't fool others. You can't just go in public, and I want you to make sure you just can't go in public and tell people, no, Prophet ﷺ never laid a hand on any of his women, and that is absolutely Islamically unacceptable. Well, that's true pertaining to Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, but then you're going to be put in a very awkward position if the person is knowledgeable enough to tell you, well, that's in your Quran. So this is where it puts you in an awkward position. Now, to be a knowledgeable person, you can just state what is Allah's intention behind things. What is Allah's ruling on things. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala declared this message to everyone, right? So it pertains to people from all walks of life. So Quran is a general manual constitution for people to adhere to. Sunnah is what comes to detail this outline. The book of the Quran is talking specifically about a process that a spousal relationship is happening, it's not going well, and then a process of what the husband needs to do with his wife, pertaining specially from the wife, that the wife is becoming an absolute disobedience to her husband. Just pertaining. So now we're talking about a specific case, pertaining to a specific case. What are the process? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that the process, she needs to be advised, she needs to be talked to. You bring some wise people to talk to her, but again, that's not bringing any resolution to this. Then physical disconnect of staying away from each other. She might misses her husband and realizes the importance of having a husband in life, and realizes that she really cannot live without her husband. So she should stop this issue of disobedience and being in absolute defiance against her husband and whatever. So that's another process. So a second process that needs to be done. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala declares a third process before the idea of divorce to be considered. So it's a process. And that process is not to be applied to anyone. So because Quran is to be applied to all people of all walks of life, you have some certain cultures around the world that physical signs of resentment from such acts, they do work. Very similar to what parents do toward their children. Parents do not immediately resort to physical spanking, but rather they do this, they advise, they talk, they ground, but then it's not working very well. Sometimes, even at an early age, a child is just going so wild and is being so troublesome, and the parent got to know that my child sometimes, not very rarely, does this. And it really works after getting to know the behavior of some children, that, spanking them on their behinds, spanking them on areas of their body that is not considered to be like honored parts, like the face and whatever. That's why in Islam, face is absolutely not allowed for any one of us to degrade, or that's why even with our own children, when we come to spank, we spank them on their behinds, on their shoulder, but we don't come close to their faces, and in no way we come close to do it in a way to actually get at someone and to abuse someone and to harm someone, or to make someone, or to bruise someone. That is absolutely not acceptable. It's just a mean of disciplinary act that only applies to certain amount or to certain segment of people around the world. It works in some cultures, and the people of that culture openly say, the women of that culture openly say, sometimes the only way to discipline a disobedient wife is by spanking her. That's their culture. And women accept that at that culture. So even a third power around the world comes to intervene and stops that culture. They're not doing any good. They're harming, because what they ended up doing, okay, you stopped that culture from applying what works for them all the time, and they stopped it. And what's happened now? Resolution, the disobedience is still there. So what are you telling me? Okay, you're stopping me from a third category that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allowed at that certain time. Then now what happens? Divorce. Divorces. Because I'm not going to live with a disobedient wife. And you stop me from continuing the divine process that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, if this doesn't work, try this. If this doesn't work, try this. At a certain segment of people around the world. And it does not work at all in other segments, in other societies. That's why it does not apply to every society. And let's talk about our society here. It would be extremely foolish of any man to apply such a category. Because the second you go physical, the culture here resent such disciplinary act. And the second you do it, you're not doing anything better to your relationship. You're worsening it more. You're making it much more worse. And that's why you stay away from such disciplinary act. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala didn't say that you must do it in order. If it this, and you must apply it in every. What's the proof to this? Right here. What we just talked about. The Messenger of Allah himself never used it. Even though his culture, that segment of population on earth allowed such disciplinary act. But he never used it. Maybe someone will say, well, he never used it because he never had to. Not necessarily. Do we know from your knowledge that did Prophet ﷺ had the ideal, perfect relationship with his wives? We know that he didn't have that. And it's reported actually in the Quran. Right? He had issues with his wife. To a point that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave him the clearance to say, listen, don't go through all this. Because the wives, sometimes they get really together, even though they're not really all on great terms, but they got together now to build a culture that Prophet Muhammad ﷺ was not really comfortable with, and they're kind of coming together on that. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allowed him at that point that if you want to let go, you can't let go. Yani if you want to resort to divorce, you can resort to divorce. And this is where the wives were really warned by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, unless you come on good terms with Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, then you're not going to get the label of being the believers, the mothers of the believers. But you can move on with your life. You can be divorced, khalas, move on with your life. But then again, the wives of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam got that disciplinary act from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's a warning from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that's coming, a divine warning. And this is when they let go. So Prophet ﷺ did have issues with his wife, but never resorted to, because he wanted to teach his followers that this resorting to physically spanking your wife is not something that really works in every segment. And most of the time it might not work, but it might work in some certain areas and some certain cultures. Let the people who are familiar with that culture take their own judgment. But it would be, again, very detrimental and extremely damaging for someone without knowledge. That's why knowledge is power, and that's why you're seeking knowledge. Come here, and then in a culture that extremely resents any type of physical disciplinary acts or reprimandment, even when it comes to children. Even they consider spanking children on their behinds or their shoulders. Absolutely not. You can't do this. This is unhuman. You are in a culture where you have to be very wise of, then absolutely, you don't resort to such thing because you're damaged, because the whole process was for you to better off a relationship. The whole process was for you to better off a relationship and to put a stop to disobedience, not for you to get revenge and to avenge your own grudges and to get back at someone and to harm someone and to physically abuse someone. So that is something that I really needed to share with you, inshallah ta'ala, so you carry it on as student of knowledge to understand how we bring those together. How do we combine between that, what's in the Quran and what's the behavior of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and how we treat each other. Whether you are a spouse, whether you are a parent, honestly, even if you are a parent, if you can, by all means, try to avoid the physical spanking of children, you should, absolutely should. Because that's not something that is acceptable, but it's only resorted to if you need to as a parent. But if you can bypass it, by all means bypass it. Because if you don't apply it right, then the outcome would be a very major disconnect between parents and their children because of the wrong way of applying such a disciplinary act. Now, we can spend a whole session on the issue of criticism and criticizing. But I want you to know one of the major factor of divorce, of what I see in counseling sessions, is not physical abuse. It's that emotional, verbal abuse. So it's that criticizing, being a critic, sharp tone, only seeing the negative of someone, the shortcoming of someone, and you don't see the beauty, the overall big picture of someone. And that is what's so damaging within a spousal relationship. And that's why Prophet Muhammad ﷺ refrained from being labeled as a critic. So this is very important when it comes to treatments, not just within spousal. If you treat yourself this way and you train yourself that you're not being hypocritical inside and outside, this is who you are. You're really not a sharp-tongued person. You don't get back at people. You don't feel like it's very necessary for me. Every time someone says something that I'm not really comfortable with, or it's directly or indirectly has an attack against some certain character of myself, I feel obligated that I need to get back. I need to attack back. I need to, everything I need to answer. Everything I need to say that no. And I always want to prove myself. Well, that's what gets us into arguments and criticism. Again, that's one extreme. Remember, Islam is moderation. I don't want you also to go to the other extreme. Other extreme, absolutely numb. You get cussed out, you get verbally abused, you get really harmed, and you say, well, I'm not going to say anything about it. Nothing. I'm just going to let go. I'm just going to forgive. I'm just not going to criticize. No, that's another extreme, honestly. Absolutely another extreme, because life cannot go that way. Allah doesn't want for anyone to be abused. So it is a middle way where you stand for your rights, but you don't go to an extreme where you are so adamant about your rights and you're not ready to let go and to forgive. that becomes another extreme. And both ways are not healthy for any type of relationship. Again, we're focused on spousal, but even with parent-child relationship, and with all the relationships that we talk about in society. He, sallallahu alayhi wasallam, instructed men to be kind to women. So now, Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam is focusing more now from men toward women, because we have to accept the fact from all the way back. I don't know how back we go back, but most of the abuse, not all, but the overwhelming abuse usually come from men toward women, because of the ni'mah and the blessing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave them to protect their loved ones, to look after their loved ones, to sacrifice their lives for their loved ones. Allah gave them more physical strength, more physical ability to dominate, more physical ability to manipulate, more physical or whatever you want to call it, more ability to win an argument, a discussion. Not all, of course, but that's the overwhelming. Because of the thing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala didn't give it to win this kind, but actually to protect and to sacrifice for their loved ones, not the opposite, to abuse them. So saying that, Prophet ﷺ focused more on being so kind to women, because again, the overwhelming phenomenon is that men are more abusive. Men more inclined into abusing their loved ones more than, whether it's husbands, fathers, fathers-in-law, in-laws, what have you. It's what's more commonly happening. Brothers, toward their siblings, like the older brothers, and we can go on and on with this. So being kind to women, that Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam kept emphasizing this to a point that in his khutbat al-wada', in his farewell, you would think like this is farewell khutbah. This is the sermon of the farewell. This is like major event where you would think that it's going to be limited to what is so most important, and that was the fact. But part of it was استوصوا بالنساء خيرا. Make sure that you look after women in good way. Not just any way, in good way. So he gave one of his, this is most, what's most familiar to you, that Prophet ﷺ said, a believer must not hate a believing woman, his wife. If he dislikes one of her characteristics, he will be pleased with others. Look at the big picture. Don't just focus on the issue that she's missing and the issues that she's not able to get over with and the issues that you do not like in her, and then leave the other many great things that she does. That's general rule. He sallallahu alayhi wasallam was considerate of his wife's feelings. This is also a very big issue about this. The feelings toward each other is very important. Again, this is where we talked about the importance of communication, open communication, extremely clear healthy communication. He sallallahu alaihi wasallam, despite the heavy load he had to run the affairs of his ummah, he did not allow that busy schedule and responsibility to prevent him from following up with his wives and being considerate towards their feelings. And you will read examples. Can you imagine a busy man like Prophet Muhammad ﷺ? You can forget about us saying, I'm so busy. I'm so busy. Just imagine a prophet of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with all the branches of what he needs to look after. A whole ummah, and it's expanding, and the challenges, and the internal affairs, and the external affairs, and we can go on and on and on. You will read some beautiful gestures where with one, despite all these busy schedules and responsibility, he would not allow that to stop him from doing what? One of his wives would be not feeling well and she's kind of sick, that he checks on her. And remember, he did not have, smartphones at that time, so you can just send a text or like a beautiful emoji with something that really kind of bring up the morals and whatever, how you doing? That's so easy for us, and still we don't do it. For him, he had to physically leave and go to physically check on that wife that was not feeling well. And he would check on her to give her that beautiful gesture that he cares. So nowadays, honestly, I would consider it to be very awful, if not even sinful, for someone that claims to love Prophet Muhammad and knows his ways of treatment, being commanded by Prophet Muhammad to be kind to his women, and has all the ability and has all the technology to do so, and he still doesn't do it. That would be really, really, really a major question mark of what this person is going through and why he does not do it, to a point that it might be sinful. He sallallahu alayhi wasallam and of course you're going to read so beautiful, just to end on this part, and you would see that the things that she was going through, we're not talking about like surgery or something major, but when you read, inshallah, in page 56, that all that she was going through was just emotional issues. The illness, or she was down just because of emotional issues. That she, when you read about her camel and what happened, when you have an animal, you have a pet, and you're so attached to that pet, just can you imagine a wife is so attached to a cat and the cat dies, and the wife really has a really disturbed day on that day, and she doesn't do the normal things that she usually do toward her family. And just imagine, not only that the husband would not consider to pick up the phone and check on his wife and how she's feeling just because she lost the cat and whatever. Not only that, but she gets extremely criticized for the fact that she's not, carrying herself the normal way because of a cat. And when you read that story, how Prophet Muhammad, and again, that's in an environment where losing an animal, or, it's just the norm of life. This is what just happens. That's why Bedouins are considered to be very rough and tough people. That's the norm of life. It's like animals die, they die every day. They slaughter them every day. That's why they don't really have much feelings toward animals. And that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made sure that, animal rights and treatment, because they're rough with animals. They don't pay much attention to these things. And despite all this, Prophet ﷺ is checking on his wife because of a feeling that she had toward the animal that she had. That was the camel. So read it, it's a beautiful story. He sallallahu alaihi wasallam would comfort his wives when they felt unwell. So that is the same thing that would be with the physical illness. He sallallahu alaihi wasallam performed ruqya on them when they became ill. It is so beautiful to the best time when you connect well is when someone is in a weak situation. Sometimes we feel all weakness is only when someone in deep trouble. May Allah forbid we get really, really, truly, seriously committed to our loved ones when something serious happens. Someone gets in an accident, you see immediate reactions. Something gets into a major illness, undiagnosed by a major illness, immediate reaction. But the unfortunate fact, it's for something big. But now we're talking about healthy relationship and beautiful prophetic relationship. It should be on something way smaller than major things. Where Prophet Muhammad would see some of his wives are not feeling well, he would perform ruqya, read Quran on them, part of treatment. Look what would happen to our relationship if someone is just not feeling well. They have cold, they got or they contracted the COVID and they're not feeling well, but they're just going on with their life, right? But just the fact that you do beautiful gesture, would you like me to fix you something? And let's skip, food today. I'll bring something from outside. I'll do the dishes. You want me to do something for you? Can I fix like hot tea for you or any hot drink for you? Would you like, or someone khalas, a little bit feels sleepy or tired, and they don't feel like they want to go up or go to their bedroom and whatever, and they want to lay down on the couch or whatever, and you come closer and you comfort them, or you bring them the blanket. Small gestures, but they mean the world for people, for spouses, for loved ones. They mean the world. And again, you apply this on the relationship pertaining to, I can tell you, wallahi, they mean the world. Because the other person is in a weak situation. And when you're weak, when you're ill, when you're down, and then you have your support right next to you, this is so beautiful. And when children see father and mother do this for each other, they grow up naturally to pick up that habit and that gesture, and they naturally apply it in their own lives. So they don't even have to push themselves. They don't even need to act it, but rather it comes natural. Inshallah, last one would be, actually, let's stop here because of the time and open the, inshallah, floor for questions, answers, additions, clarifications, anything that comes to mind, inshallah ta'ala. So it's all yours now, inshallah. I will stop here today. So we're stopping on page 57, inshallah. So next week we will start page 58 and we'll continue, inshallah, with that. But, our apology, or my apology for the change of schedule. We had some long long ago of commitments that were just scheduled during the time of our classes, and then we decided to bring in the classes, and then this conflict happened. So inshallah next week it would be also like today's time, earlier, and then inshallah the following week we will go back to regular time. We will go back to regular time, which is 12 o'clock. So you can do whatever personal things you need to do in the morning, finish your chores, your responsibility, and can comfortably come at 12 o'clock to seek some knowledge, and then pray dhuhr in jama'ah, and inshallah move on to finish your other family responsibility. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward you all, inshallah. And deeply, taking the moment to always recognize part of our good treatment toward each other is to always remember those brothers and sisters who are working behind scenes to facilitate all this for you. Remember them in your dua, remember them in your prayer, because those are the people that actually go above and beyond what we push ourselves toward. They do cut on their family time, they do cut on their responsibility, they do prioritize this over many other things that others are doing. They could be, taking care of their garden now and doing things, or going out, or watching something. So alhamdulillah, may Allah reward them all. May Allah reward you for coming also, and reward those online that also physically couldn't make it, but still they are with us connecting online. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bring reward to all of you and increase you in knowledge, and having you among the ibad of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, those that Allah labeled to be like my ibad, my servants. Can you imagine being labeled to be a servant of Allah? May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us among those, inshallah. Allahumma ameen ya Rabb. Any question? Yes.
I just actually had a comment, mashallah. We're always taught the fiqh and seerah, and a lot of times we tend to focus on exactly, I think as you said in the first class, the ritual worship acts, but the character of the Prophet ﷺ and how he normalized and promoted kindness and tenderness and the things that you might think are just kind of extra habits. Like that was his normal routine. That we need to bring that back into our lives, like where we make kindness the norm, where we make compassion going above and beyond the norm rather than something that we do once in a while. And these stories are so touching.
Yes. May Allah reward you. Yes, of course. And I really highly recommend that you read those stories, because I'm not sharing them in details with you, but I'm giving you the gist of it. But those are really beautiful. That this is how we get better, honestly. And in life, we always, when you're labeled to be professional at work, and you're labeled to be very committed and dedicated, that doesn't come with normal dedications, right? It has to have the extra. It has to have the extra. Otherwise, you're just going to be with the mainstream. If you're that type of person that is just doing the norm, then you are among and joining the many billions of people around the world. But if you are always going the extra mile to bring these beautiful, concepts into your life, not only that you're going to be labeled differently and you're going to be recognized by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala differently, but also the beauty of it, it pays back. It just makes your life so beautiful, so good. It makes you feel good. It makes you feel that you are a person that has really been blessed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that you got to be able to go the extra mile to be who you are now, and to teach others to be that way. So inshallah, May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us to, I do definitely agree, and that's why I specifically chose this kind of topics, because I do agree with Sister Farah that you would see around the world it's a global thing, even when it comes to preaching and classes and many other educational programs. It's mainly focused on more of rituals and worship acts rather than the actual, behavior of dealing with each other. But may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us to be among those who learning something that many others are not learning, applying it in our life and pass it on to others, inshallah. And you can always be part of the khair. Please promote these classes to others. Let them know if they can't physically come, they can just connect online. If they cannot even come physically, they cannot even connect online, they can always go back and watch these videos on our masjid YouTube channel to, inshallah ta'ala, learn, inshallah. May Allah reward you all, inshallah. Any other things before we let you go? So inshallah, next week, same time, inshallah, around between 9:30, 9:40, something, until we finish the first class, we wrap it up. And you join between 9:30, 9:40, inshallah. يلا جزاكم الله خير بارك الله فيكم سبحانك الله بحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته